Hungary will fully unblock the provision of a European loan to Ukraine worth 90 billion euros. Hungary will not block sanctions against Russia, and Budapest will also strive to diversify energy supplies as much as possible in order not to depend so heavily on Russia. Hungary's new leader, Péter Magyar, has finally lifted the veil of secrecy regarding his foreign policy, and his words have surprised many people. They were so surprised that the Kremlin quickly declared that Hungary is now a country unfriendly to Russia. Overall, it turned out that Péter Magyar is exactly the kind of politician who has become the complete opposite of Viktor Orbán. My name is Alexei Pecci. Let's discuss this topic together, but before we start, I ask you to subscribe to the channel, leave any comment under this episode, and give it a like. And also subscribe to my Telegram channel Pecci News, the link to it is in the description of this video. So, Péter Magyar, whose party received a constitutional majority, 2/3 of the votes in the Hungarian parliament, will not obstruct Ukraine from receiving a loan from the European Union. Péter Magyar stated this on Monday at his first public press conference, and it's worth quoting Magyar right away since his words have already been misinterpreted. First the quote, then we'll analyze it. Quote, "A multi-billion loan for Ukraine. I'm not sure what we're talking about because in December at the European Council summit, a decision was made to allocate 90 billion euros in which Hungary, the Czech Republic and Slovakia will not participate. This doesn't concern us, and that's exactly how it was decided. This decision was already made in December in Brussels, so I don't understand why it should be changed. I understand Viktor Orbán's position. Changes, because at first he accepted the loan, then he rejected it, and it's the same with Ukraine's accession to the European Union. In 2022, he told Ursula von der Leyen that Ukraine should join the EU immediately, and then he himself opposed it. We will try to be consistent and honest in our communication and not change our decisions every 6 months." And this was the most important quote that many people are waiting for. What is Magyar talking about in it? At the EU summit in December last year, a decision was made to allocate 90 billion euros from 24 European Union countries excluding Hungary, the Czech Republic and Slovakia. 3 countries don't contribute, but they also don't interfere with the others. Then Viktor Orbán abruptly changed his stance, reversed this decision and blocked not his own funds but EU funds for Ukraine. Now Magyar says that he doesn't understand why Orbán did this and accordingly will stick to the original decision made in December, that is, he will not block the loan. Magyar says directly that the decision has been made and he's not getting involved because they're not investing any money there. And what else is important? Hungary still won't participate in the loan itself, but let's be honest, no one expected that from them anyway. And Magyar explained this by saying that Hungary is in a difficult economic situation as a result of Orbán's years of failed policies. Let me give you another quote from Magyar. "Hungary is in a very difficult financial situation, and our task is to get back the European Union funds that belong to us, which all EU members received except for us. We didn't receive them, we can't use them for our economy, so we can't take on even more loans. The Hungarian budget deficit has tripled since 2000, so we would like to get the EU money back." Let me explain. We're talking about the 17 billion euros blocked by the EU for Orbán's government. They were blocked because Orbán started to crack down on journalists, rewrite laws, bring the courts under his control, and so on. That's the short version. Magyar said that he would stick to the common foreign policy line of the European Union in order to unblock the 17 billion euros for Hungary. And for that he needs to unblock 90 billion for Ukraine. Well, as EU diplomats say, that's exactly what was expected of him in Brussels, because 17 billion for Budapest is not all. Lifting the veto on the loan to Ukraine and the new package of sanctions against Russia should be the first step in a process that can unblock things. In total, up to 35 billion euros that the European Union had refused to give to Hungary. And it's important to note here that Orbán unexpectedly withdrew his consent for the loan to Ukraine in February when the flow of Russian oil through the Druzhba pipeline via Ukraine stopped. It was damaged by Russian shelling, but Orbán accused Ukraine of blocking the supplies allegedly for political reasons. According to the plan, Kiev was supposed to start receiving money from the loan in April, but because of Orbán, this didn't happen. Now the crisis is resolved. It will be quick. The thing is, Ukraine only has enough money left to finance the budget and defense until June, so it's important to release the loan as quickly as possible. Brussels wants to act quickly to transfer the money to Kyiv as soon as possible. And now Cyprus, which currently holds the EU presidency, will raise this issue at a meeting of the bloc's ambassadors in the near future. This was reported by a Cypriot official. And now there is a lot of manipulation surrounding Peter Magyar. Well, for example, they are already writing that supposedly it's just trading one bad option for another, that Magyar is just as pro-Russian as Viktor Orban, that Magyar is a Trojan horse. What do you expect from Magyar? He's just as pro-Russian as Viktor Orban, and so on. Let's break down these manipulations now. First, in Hungary, the voters really replaced a Kremlin puppet with a pro-European politician. In the case of Orban, the term puppet is, not a figure of speech. He really served the Kremlin. He personally told Vladimir Putin he was willing to do anything for the Kremlin dictator. This is no secret. Based on this, secondly, Magyar is not pro-Russian, but at the same time Magyar is not pro-Ukrainian either. Well, in the literal sense of the word. For example, Friedrich Merz or Emmanuel Macron. But based on what Magyar said today, Hungary will simply fully share the European Union's policy towards Ukraine, which means it will not block new packages. Sanctions against Russia, there will be no help for Russia, no removal of Russian oligarchs from under sanctions, no blocking of European aid, and so on. Well, that's all. That will be more than enough for Ukraine. That is, Hungary will do exactly what the entire European Union is doing. Moreover, Orban flatly refused to receive oil through Croatia. In other words, he didn't want to diversify, even though he could have. We discussed on this YouTube channel that there were plenty of options. But he just insisted on taking only Russian oil. For Peter Magyar, that's not a problem. He has already stated that he is ready to diversify supplies. This doesn't mean he'll stop using Russian oil right away, but the process has begun. And I noticed that some viewers of my YouTube channel didn't understand the message of one of my previous episodes at all, where we talked about whether Magyar is ready for negotiations with Vladimir Putin. Magyar said that if necessary he is ready to negotiate with Russia about energy supplies, and this was immediately portrayed as betrayal. But let's figure it out now. But before that, if you find my episodes interesting and important for you, I urge you to support the work of this YouTube channel with your donation or sponsorship on YouTube. All the links and details on how to do this are in the description of this video. I will be grateful for any support you can give. So first of all, let me remind you of the actual quote from Magyar on this matter. Naturally, if it comes to that, we will have to sit down at the negotiating table with the Russian president. But neither the geographical position of Russia nor that of Hungary will change. Our energy dependence will also remain for some time. We need to strengthen diversification, but this doesn't happen overnight. If necessary, we will negotiate, but we will not become friends. And now let's be honest. Friedrich Merz and Emmanuel Macron, for example, say that under certain conditions it will be necessary to negotiate with Russia. The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, also believes that it will be necessary to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. So there's really nothing surprising here when Magyar says that if necessary he too will negotiate with Putin. One more thing, they say that supposedly Magyar is against supplying weapons to Ukraine. Yes, Hungary will not supply weapons to Ukraine, just as it hasn't done so up to this point, but not because they don't like it. There's nothing to supply. And it's enough that Hungary will not block European arms supplies to Ukraine. Another issue is the claim that Magyar is against Ukraine's accelerated accession to the European Union. That's true, and he has been saying this for a long time, but again, let's be honest. It is specifically Germany, Italy, Poland, and probably about a dozen other European countries that are against Ukraine's accelerated accession to the EU. And let's also be honest. Germany will not join the European Union while the war continues. Besides, Magyar can simply open the negotiation clusters for Ukraine that Orban blocked and step aside, that's it. And then a multi-year bureaucratic process will begin, which would not depend on either Orban or Magyar. It's not Magyar's fault, but the European Union system as a whole. Well, and in the end, after a short press conference, the Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, stated that Russia would not congratulate Magyar on his election victory and called Hungary an unfriendly country. And this, as you know, is a very important indicator. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. If you consider the work of this channel important, interesting, and necessary, I encourage you to support the channel financially. You can do this through your donation or a paid subscription. How can you do it? All the links and details are in the description of this video. It clearly says, support the Alexei Peachy channel. Choose any option that is convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support you provide. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.